Packers versus Eagles. I'm going to give you my prediction. I'm going to give you the preview. This is a super exciting game. I was obviously very excited about the Ravens-Chiefs game last night, but in a way I find this one even more exciting because there's more to learn about these teams. We've got 3 new coordinators. We've got an Eagles team coming off a really, really disappointing season. We've got a young Packers team coming off a season which seems like the start of a new era. So very, very exciting stuff. It's going to be held in Brazil, the first ever game in Brazil. So whether you think that's the right way forward or not, it'll be really interesting to see a new atmosphere. The Eagles come in as 2.5-point favourites, and the betting markets have it as a 49.5 total over-under, so predicting a reasonably high-scoring game. A little bit of a concerning injury report for the Packers. The Romeo Doubs situation is still developing. He had a bit of a hand injury. We're yet to see if he is good to go. And then you've got Edgerrin Cooper, who they drafted in the second round, a linebacker. He's struggling with a hip injury. Tucker Kraft, the tight end. Marshawn Lloyd, they've just drafted. All of these guys are in limited practice. And the only real loss for the Eagles is Devin White, which is a big loss. He is their best linebacker. But you see Landon Dixon and AJ Brown listed here. They're in full participation, so they're all good to go. But let's get into it. And let's start with the Packers offense. I am a huge fan of Jordan Love. I was a big fan of him coming into the year, and he didn't let me down. The Packers tend to keep quite a balance between running the ball and throwing the ball. They tend to do a bit of both. And part of why they're a really interesting team is that they have no real standout superstar wide receiver. But head coach Matt LaFleur and the offensive coordinator Adam Stenavich, they do a phenomenal job of making the most of these guys, scheming them up in the right areas. Most of them are a little bit more nifty than they are truly explosive. Christian Watson being the only real outlier there. And I think if it was just a couple of these guys, we'd be having a slightly different conversation. But it's the combination of all of them, the way they work off each other, that really gives Matt LaFleur his opportunity to shine and show how he can put these guys in favourable positions to succeed. On top of that, you've got this young duo of tight ends in Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. I feel like the Packers have gone under the radar a little bit on the job they've done drafting all of these guys in recent years. Obviously, drafting Jordan Love was a controversial decision at the time, and they just seem to have a ton of these mid-round guys who pop up in different positions and end up being really useful for them. And speaking of which, you've got these 2 tackles in Tom Walker playing right tackle and Rasheed Walker playing left tackle. Rasheed Walker as a rookie last year out of the 7th round, and he genuinely seemed to have become a really solid left tackle for the Packers. Zach Tom was drafted the year before that in the 4th round, really solid right tackle for the Packers. And so Jordan Love did have a better time to throw the ball last year, which was really impressive. The interior is a little bit concerning. You've got centre Josh Myers, who does look a little bit shaky at times. And then you've got Sean Ryan coming in to play a bit more of a full-time role this year as a guard. He's got the physical tools to do it. I think he can be effective in the running game. And hopefully guard Elton Jenkins can keep it all together, as he's proven himself as a really solid guard. It's really the pass protection that gives me slight pause here. I think these guys as a combination can create a reasonably effective running game, and they're going to have Josh Jacobs behind them, who I think is going to do just fine in terms of replacing Aaron Jones. In fact, you can certainly argue that it's a bit of an upgrade. So what sort of job can the Eagles do in terms of stopping this young offense? Because this defense was genuinely not very good last year. 29th in opponent's passer rating, 20th in opponent yards per carry, and 27th in opponent's yard per play. Really disappointing. But that is why they have brought in Vic Fangio. He is pretty well known. He's got a history of creating effective defenses over the years and has a style of defense that was copied so often that you now have the defense known after him. The Fangio defense is a thing. And it's actually a pretty conservative style of defense. What he does is he likes to keep the offense in front of him. That's the theory. He wants to force you to run the ball, and he wants to do that by only rushing 4. So having plenty of his defenders available in coverage, and when the front 4 can succeed, it makes this very effective. He tends to run a 2 high coverage, meaning the 2 safeties are effectively playing as 2 free safeties next to each other, as opposed to having your free safety and then a strong safety in the box, and also plays a lot of off-man coverage. So as I say, it's all about keeping the offense in front of you. And when I had a look at the history of the Fangio defense, I found that it either works or it doesn't. He needs the personnel to do it. He needs to have the front 4 which can win on their own. And if everyone's not doing their job effectively, you can see the completion rate of quarterbacks being very high against this defense, because they sit off, they protect the deep ball, and then there's a load of space underneath. And what's really important in this defense is that he has some defensive linemen who can stop the run. And I think Fangio has that with the Eagles here. This is what the interior defensive line is looking like. Jalen Carter is becoming an absolute stud, already one of the better defensive tackles in the game. Jordan Davis still coming along, struggles with weight a little bit, can look a bit lethargic at times, but he has all the potential in the world. And Milton Williams is a little bit undersized, but actually really, really effective stopping the run. In terms of generating pressure, that's where Jalen Carter really, really thrives. And then you also make the signing of Bryce Huff in the off-season. He had 10 sacks, so really, really solid. But I don't think people actually realise exactly how good Bryce Huff was in 2023. His win rate was second in the NFL among edge rushers, and his pressures per play was third in the NFL. He was one of the elite edge rushers in the league last year. And then you also have Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham, really, really good players in their own right. So Bryce Huff, just the cherry on top of a really, really good pass rush already. And then the corner situation is interesting because Darius Slay is really, really solid. And they drafted Quinyon Mitchell in the first round. They also drafted Cooper DeJean, two guys who I really wasn't a fan of, to be honest. I thought Quinyon Mitchell, in terms of being able to turn and change direction, he wasn't asked to do it because he was playing a ton of off-man coverage in college, which is exactly what he's going to be asked to do here. And a very similar story with Cooper DeJean. I wasn't convinced by his ability to change direction. Fangio defense allows these guys to keep it in front of them and just go and make plays. And then two safeties back there, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Blankenship, two really good players. But I think about this Fangio defense and the weaknesses, and I think about this Packers offense, and I think it's a really good matchup for the Packers. I think these type of nifty receivers, LaFleur's ability to scheme them into space, I think you're going to see Jordan Love have a really high completion percentage. I don't think the Eagles are going to allow a ton of explosive plays, but I think you're going to see Jordan Love slowly pick away at this defense and end up having real success. Moving on to the Eagles offense, and they also have a brand new offensive coordinator. Kellen Moore is a young but proven offensive coordinator. He had a gig at the Chargers as a head coach, didn't work out, but in terms of calling the plays, he's really, really good. Runs a pretty balanced offense, but does an excellent job of moving his receivers around and putting them into situations where they can win. I'll be honest, on the flip side to Jordan Love, I am not the biggest fan of Jalen Hurts. I think he throws the ball well in terms of accuracy, but I don't think he has the biggest arm. He's obviously not the biggest in terms of stature, and I think his processing is actually really, really underwhelming when I watch it on film. However, the Eagles made a Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts because they had a really, really good team. And I think they walk into this year with an excellent situation. They've got this offensive line, which is obviously now without Jason Kelce, but I look at this offensive line and I really think it's going to hold together. We've got Cam Jurgens, who I think is going to develop into a really solid centre. Landon Dixon's already a really good guard. Mekhi Becton's an interesting one. They've just brought him in from the Jets. Obviously had his struggles with weight and injuries, but seems to be in a much healthier place right now. I think people underestimate how important it is to be playing with good offensive linemen next to you in terms of your personal performance. So I think Mekhi Becton could slot straight in there and look really, really solid. And then the two tackles, Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata, not too much analysis needed. They are just two of the best tackles in the league. In terms of weapons, the Eagles obviously have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. AJ Brown being the superstar, we all know how good he is, but then Devontae Smith probably goes under the radar a little bit in terms of how good he is. Very much a number one receiver in his own right. They've brought in Jahan Dotson from my team, the Commanders, and take it from me, a Commanders fan, he is absolutely the real deal. The offense last year was completely dysfunctional, didn't give him and others an opportunity, but watching him on film, he was always running high-level routes, bringing the ball in at a high level. Then, of course, you bring in Saquon Barkley behind this offensive line. You've got to be able to stop the run, as always, against the Eagles if you're coming up against them, but they've never really quite had a running back like Saquon Barkley, the dynamism he has to change direction and really take advantage of those holes. So let's see what the Packers have got going on defense and whether they can hold up. They have brought in a new defensive coordinator, goes by the name of Jeff Hafley. A bit of a strange hire, not necessarily a bad one, but one that wasn't exactly expected. He was the head coach of Boston College last year. He has a big personality. He's an aggressive play caller. And in terms of the type of defense, it's a pretty traditional 4-3 front. It's a sort of cover 3 system. It's press man coverage a lot of the time and a single high coverage in terms of the safety. So in contrast to what we were speaking about earlier with the Eagles defense, the Fangio defense being the 2 free safeties, this is going to be a defense where you just have the 1 free safety. And one of the main things to take away from this defense is that he wants his defensive linemen to attack the gaps. He doesn't want them to maintain the space, which is something that I've always looked at as a really important thing for defensive linemen. He has a slightly different outlook on it, and he wants the defensive lineman to penetrate, and then he wants the linebacker to come and fill those holes if there is holes there. And so does he have the personnel to do that? Well, Kenny Clark and Devontae Wyatt, I think, are made for this system. Kenny Clark is a really, really effective pass rushing defensive tackle, and Devontae Wyatt, I remember him coming out of the draft, he is made for this system. He is all about that quick, nifty movement. It's the ability to penetrate those gaps, which is exactly what Hafley is looking for in this system. In terms of the linebacker to plug those holes, it's going to have to be one of these guys, and it's going to be Quay Walker. Edgerrin Cooper carrying a bit of a knock. He was drafted in the second round. He's very athletic, could have a really high ceiling, but I don't necessarily trust him to do this job, this important job in this system. And Quay Walker is an excellent player, but I don't know if I necessarily trust him all the way to do this job. He can be a little bit erratic, a little bit overly aggressive. They have a really impressive pass rush, the Packers. They have Rashan Gary, who is a serious player. Preston Smith, Lucas Van Ness, coming off a rookie season where he flashed some potential. But as I'm going through the rosters and the systems and trying to work out who could win this game, I'm starting to lead towards the Eagles. And then I get to this secondary, and Jaire Alexander and Eric Stokes both had injury issues last year. We know how good Jaire Alexander can be. We know he can be a lockdown outside corner. And Eric Stokes, when healthy, has also shown that he can be a lockdown outside corner. And then you bring in Xavier McKinney, one of the best free safeties in the game. Absolutely perfect for this system, this single high safety system. It's very important that you have a free safety that can cover, and Xavier McKinney is the man. And so my prediction on this side of the ball is that Barkley will have a couple of moments where he gashes the defense. He might have a breakaway touchdown. It could be quite a few explosive moments, just with the fact that this defense is going to be quite aggressive, I think. And I don't know if you can quite trust these linebackers to plug those holes against this offensive line and against Saquon Barkley. However, I think there also could be a couple of important moments where Barkley's stopped behind the line of scrimmage because they have penetrated the O-line, which is the flip side of this system, and Kenny Clark and Devontae Wyatt, that interior being perfect for this system. I also think they'll have a chance to put Jalen Hurts under a little bit of pressure. And I think they can hold the offense in check with this secondary. I think they can hold AJ Brown, Devontae Smith and Jahan Dotson, Dallas Goedert. I think they can just about keep it under control. And so I actually ended up going with the Packers 23-20. I got burnt last night going for the Ravens with this very similar sort of slight upset thing, but I have to trust my gut, and I've got a feeling the Packers are going to pull this off. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know what I got wrong or what you agree with. If you do enjoy the content, please feel free to subscribe. I'm trying to get these previews out a little bit earlier because I think this is going to come out like an hour before the game or something. But regardless, I am super excited for this game. Make sure you enjoy the game, and I'll see you next time.